Hi guys, welcome back to Sabers. So this little video is just to show you an upgrade that I'm doing for MJ. Currently he has got a stunt saber, no sound, just light, and he wants to convert this to have sound. So we're looking at putting a nano biscotti version full soundboard in it for him. But before we do that, there are a few things that we are going to have to change about this saber. Firstly, this blade. Currently, the bulbs, the LEDs are actually in the blade. That's not going to work with our soundboard. So we need to remove the blade. There you go, you can see the LEDs in there. Get rid of that. And I will be making him a brand new blade to go with that one. Secondly, this switch here is a latching switch. Again, that's no good for our soundboard. We need a momentary switch that springs back when you press it in. We will also be changing the battery pack. Currently in here, he has got 4 AA batteries giving 6 volts. The Nano Biscotti will only run 3 to 5 and half volts, so I need to change that for a new battery pack. In doing that, I will add a recharge port and kill key so that the Saber can be recharged, and obviously the kill key stops the battery being drained by the soundboard, and I'll put that somewhere around here. So we're going to need to take everything out. The other thing we need to do with regards to sound, it's always best to have a chassis. Keeps all the parts together, make sure that they're not going to be rattling around. You have a general speaker holder and chassis parts that will hold the soundboard and a battery. Now, unfortunately, these parts, if I show you in the pummel, are too big for MJ's Saber, so I'm going to have to custom make some that will fit with this Saber. So there's a lot of work to do. We will start by stripping it down. Oh, the other thing we've got to do is we've got to add an LED, because the LEDs, as I said, are in the blade, and we're getting rid of the blade and putting a new one in. So I'm going to have to add an LED module in there somewhere as well. So quite easy. We're just going to start by stripping it down. We're going to get rid of all of this electrics because don't need any of them. Get rid of the battery. Can all go, and this switch can come out as well. There we go. So we're just left with the empty hilt parts, ready to be remade with sound. There we go. Screw that back in there. That's it. That's all I need. And I'll do the rest in the workshop. Next thing we have to do is build the chassis parts for MJ's Saber. We are going to be using a piece of nylon like this, but at the moment that is too big to fit into MJ's Saber. So we're going to have to turn it down on the lathe and make sure that we can get it to fit. Okay, now the nylon fits into the hilt, it's the right size, we can go ahead and start making our chassis parts. I've drawn a line on it here. That's because the bottom half is going to be the speaker housing, and the top half is going to be what I'm going to use for the chassis discs. What I've also done is I've already bored a hole so that the speaker can fit in, and cut a groove on the inside of the speaker housing for the speaker to clip into firmly. What we need to do now is go to the drill, because I need to drill 2 holes right the way through the side of the nylon for the bars on the chassis parts to go in. Next thing we're going to do is drill a hole for the battery. Your chassis disc is going to look something like that. So there's a hole for the battery, you've got 2 holes on the side for the supports of the chassis, and then there's a cutout at the top for the soundboard. So we're going to drill the hole now. I've pre-marked a few things. Okay, next we need to cut the chassis discs to allow them to fit the soundboard. So we are going to use the Dremel and just cut along these lines. I've now just finished cleaning off all the melted bits that were left over by the Dremel. Now all we've got to do is cut the speaker holder bit off, cut the chassis discs down to size. We will then cut this bit out with the Dremel later. Once the chassis discs to the size they need to be, it will be a lot easier to go through that. And then that is it. Everything will be ready for assembly into MJ Saber. Okay, so the chassis parts are all done. Speaker holder and chassis discs all fitting exactly as it should do. So the next job is to take the switch section, and we need to put another hole in ready for the recharge port. Okay, hole is drilled, and I have gone through with a countersink as well. Put it just off to the side of where the switch is. What I don't want is for the electrics to foul up each other if they were in line. I could have put it here, but I thought it would look a bit nicer just going on the side there. So that is all ready to be fitted with electrics. As we've seen from the video so far, we can see that MJ's Saber is a unique Saber, and a lot of parts are going to need to be custom made. So I actually need to make a custom heatsink that is going to fit into the emitter here, because any off-the-shelf heatsinks won't fit. I need something to house the LED and obviously take the heat away from the LED when the Saber is in use. So we've got a bit of copper in the lathe, which we're going to mill down to make sure it fits inside the emitter. Okay, so we need it to be about 23 mils, which we are just about there now. Okay, we're going to get this cut, drilled and ready to be fitted into the emitter. Okay, so now that we have a disc of copper, which is drilled and cut to size, we're going to make a top for the heatsink module out of aluminium. So again, need to turn that down to size, and then there's a little bit of drilling involved. Okay, that has now been turned down. So as you can see, it fits nicely on the emitter. Okay, what we need to do now is drill that right through. That will sit on top of the lens, which will sit on top of the heatsink, and all of that will fit nicely in the emitter. I'm going to utilise these extra grub screws, which we use to hold the old blade on, to hold the whole thing in place. Okay, we've now got everything we need to start putting together MJ Saber. We've got a couple of threaded bars, and we've got some pipe. This is going to be used as spacers. This will all be used to make the chassis, the internal chassis that will hold everything together. You've got the chassis discs, which will hold the battery and the soundboard. You've got the speaker holder, which will obviously hold the speaker. There's a switch and a recharge port to wire in. bulb with our own makeshift heatsink module, and a couple of resistors that we're going to need as well. So all we've got to do, get the chassis made, get everything wired up, and then we're ready to start putting it all into the hilt. Okay, spaces have been cut, now to construct the chassis. Okay, so that's our complete chassis. You'll notice that it is a little bit longer than these spaces stop at. Reason for this is if that's the main body part of the hilt, the reason I haven't taken it to there is because I actually want it to go right up to the end of the emitter. Reason being, if that is all the way in there, but up against that, when you're using it as a saber, it's not going to be sliding up and down in the hilt and making a noise. You want it all to be nice and tight and all in there completely correctly. So now that that's done, we need to attach the speaker and fit the battery in, and then we go ahead and wire in the rest of our components. Now we're going to wire up the switch and the recharge port for the Saber, and then we will mount them into the switch section, ready for connection ultimately to the soundboard. Right, we've got the recharge port and the switch all wired up, ready to be fitted to the switch section. Now that the switch and the recharge port are in place, we need to wire up the LED and just connect it to the heatsink with a little bit of thermal tape. The LED is wired in now, so what we've got to do is connect the lens and the cap on top of the lens and fit it all into the emitter. The LED is now in place, and I've also tidied up these wires a little bit. Coming out of the back here, there's quite a few wires, and many of them are actually going to the same terminal on the soundboard. And as you can see, the terminals on the soundboard are really small. So rather than trying to fit 2 or 3 wires in some cases onto the same terminal, I've joined them all together up here where there's a lot more room, and just left a single wire coming out, which will connect direct to the soundboard. I'm going to connect the battery up before putting the main hilt on, and then that will slide obviously back into the main chassis. Again, it's just for ease because there's not a lot of room to work with in this, so it's just trying to make sure that we can get everything as simple. Battery is now wired in and seated in the chassis. Last thing to do is to connect the soundboard, and the Saber is complete. The wiring is now complete. All that's left to do is to connect the soundboard to the chassis and screw on the pommel. Okay, and here is the finished Saber. I've made a bespoke custom blade. Didn't video doing that. There is a video on making blades also on the page that you can look at. But this is all ready. So spin it round and remove the kill key. And then turn it on. MJ's gone for purple blade with a purple LED switch as well. That is all finished and ready to be shipped out. Remember, if you are looking for a custom Saber, or if you have a Saber that is just a stunt Saber and you're looking to get it upgraded to one with sound like MJ did, or even if it's just a simple repair. Drop me a line, I'm more than happy to help. Hope to hear from you soon. Thanks.